The silence was deafening as I stood in the middle of our laboratory, frozen in place while my colleagues avoided eye contact. The air felt thick with the scent of betrayal and expensive jasmine extract. While you were off playing with flowers in Tokyo, the company needed someone reliable, Terrence announced, his voice carrying across the lab. Phoebe has graciously accepted the head perfumer position. 6 months of intensive training under Master Hanako Yamamoto, one of the last practitioners of ancient Japanese aromatic techniques, rendered meaningless in a single sentence. 7 years of research, overnight shifts, and innovative formulations, all dismissed as playing with flowers. Phoebe stood beside Terrence, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She'd been with the company for exactly 14 weeks. Her previous experience consisted of a basic cosmetics certification and being Terrence's brother's daughter. The board unanimously approved my decision, Terrence continued, though I knew the board meant him and his 2 golf buddies. Phoebe has shown remarkable aptitude. Her signature scent will headline our collection at the International Fragrance Exhibition next month. I felt 20 pairs of eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. The promotion wasn't just a title. It was the culmination of a secret project our founder Ingrid had entrusted to me before her retirement. A revolutionary approach to fragrance that could transform our boutique house into a global phenomenon. Thanks to your absence, family comes first around here, Terrence added, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his thin lips. I smiled back, not the reaction he expected. What's so amusing? He demanded, nostrils flaring. Nothing, I replied softly, just thinking about the promotion you gave away. His eyes narrowed slightly. The position needed to be filled immediately. Phoebe graciously decided to stay in town rather than take that opportunity in Milan. My gaze shifted to Phoebe, who was examining her manicure. Milan had never shown interest in her. I knew, because I had contacts throughout the industry who would have mentioned such an offer. I look forward to seeing your creation, Phoebe, I said. Master Yamamoto always emphasized that balance is everything in fragrance. Those old techniques are outdated, she replied with a dismissive wave. Modern perfumery is about impact, not balance. That single statement confirmed everything. She had no idea what she was doing. Terrence clapped his hands. Excellent. Veda, you'll be assisting Phoebe with the final preparations for the exhibition. Your experience will be valuable, even if you weren't right for the leadership role. The laboratory slowly returned to work as Terrence led Phoebe to what should have been my office. As they walked away, I overheard him say, "Don't worry about Veda. She's all theory, no practical sense." My colleague Dimitri approached cautiously. "I'm sorry, Veda. Everyone knows you deserved that position." "It's fine," I replied, removing my lab coat. "Excuse me a moment." I walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pressed my forehead against the cool metal door. 7 years of dedication, countless weekends sacrificed. The careful building of relationships with suppliers to source the rarest ingredients. The meticulous documentation of every experiment. The gentle guidance of junior team members. All of it, handed to Phoebe because her last name matched Terrence's family tree. I took 3 deep breaths, detecting the subtle notes of cleaning solution, hand soap, and fear, my fear, not of failure, but of what I might do next. Because what Terrence didn't understand was that the promotion he'd given away wasn't just any position. What Phoebe didn't realize was that the formulations she was now in charge of weren't just pleasant scents. What neither of them knew was that, in Tokyo, I hadn't just learned techniques, I'd uncovered secrets. Secrets about how certain molecular combinations could influence human perception and behavior. Secrets that, in the wrong hands, could lead to disaster. And Phoebe's hands were very wrong indeed. I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back had changed. 6 months in Tokyo had transformed me. I was no longer just a talented perfumer. I was something else entirely. I straightened my shoulders and dried my hands. As I reached for the door, I made my decision. Terrence had no idea what he'd just done. Neither did Phoebe, but they were about to find out. If this story has captured your attention, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for more. Your support helps me continue crafting these tales of determination and justice. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had something you worked hard for taken away unfairly. I read every comment and would love to hear your experiences. My name is Veda Chandler, and until 6 months ago, I was the deputy perfumer at Alchemy Essentials, a boutique fragrance house known for its innovative, natural scents. I've always had what my grandmother called a witch's nose, able to identify and separate individual scents from the most complex bouquets. When other children were drawing with crayons, I was categorizing the distinct waxy notes of each color. I joined Alchemy 7 years ago with a biochemistry degree and a passion for transforming molecules into emotions. While other perfumers created pleasant fragrances, I created experiences, scents that transported you to specific memories or feelings. This gift caught the attention of Ingrid Northwood, our founder and a legend in the fragrance world. Ingrid became my mentor, recognizing something in me that others missed. She wasn't interested in commercial success alone. She believed fragrances could do more than smell nice. They could heal, inspire, and transform. 3 years into my tenure, Ingrid shared a secret with me. Veda, she said, her voice soft in her private lab. Throughout history, certain master perfumers discovered that specific molecular combinations could influence human perception and behavior. Not in a mystical way, but through neurological pathways. The ancient temples used these techniques in their ceremonies. She showed me delicate scrolls and worn journals, her collection of fragrance history that few had ever seen. Modern science is only beginning to understand what ancient masters knew intuitively, she continued. Certain scent molecules can trigger specific responses in the brain, feelings of trust, alertness, calm, or even subtle anxiety. Over the next 4 years, Ingrid and I worked quietly on what she called the Harmony Project, a revolutionary approach to fragrance that went beyond pleasant smells to create beneficial sensory experiences. We conducted careful research, documenting every experiment and discovery. As Ingrid prepared for retirement, she arranged for me to train with Master Hanako Yamamoto in Tokyo, one of the last practitioners of these ancient techniques. This knowledge is powerful, Ingrid warned before I left. It must be used with respect and precision. One molecule out of balance can transform a beneficial scent into something quite different. Terrence had been appointed interim CEO after Ingrid's retirement. He was a marketing executive who knew nothing about fragrance creation but plenty about profit margins. He reluctantly approved my Tokyo training but made it clear he considered it an unnecessary expense. In Tokyo, Master Hanako taught me that the most powerful fragrances worked through subtle influence, not overwhelming force. The Western approach is often too direct, she explained as we worked. They create scents that shout. We create scents that whisper directly to the brain. I learned techniques for formulating molecules that could induce specific states of mind, clarifying focus, enhancing empathy, alleviating anxiety. But I also learned the dangers of imbalance, how the same molecular structures, when improperly formulated, could induce opposite effects. Balance is everything, Master Hanako emphasized daily. Respect the power you hold. When I returned from Tokyo last week, I discovered chaos at Alchemy. Terrence had accelerated the timeline for our signature collection launch to coincide with the International Fragrance Exhibition, FS, just 4 weeks away. And now, Phoebe, with her 14 weeks of experience, was in charge of the entire project. After the announcement of Phoebe's promotion, Dimitri filled me in on what had happened during my absence. She changes formulations without testing, he whispered as we worked in the lab. She doubles concentrations because she thinks scents should be stronger. She ignores safety protocols because they're too slow. Has anyone seen her actual work? I asked. Terrence won't allow criticism, Dimitri replied. Last week, Alexis suggested additional testing for Phoebe's signature scent, and Terrence removed her from the exhibition team. That evening, I stayed late, ostensibly to catch up on missed work. Once everyone had left, I carefully examined Phoebe's formulation notebooks. What I found terrified me. Phoebe had taken our delicate, balanced formulations and brutalized them. She'd increased potent compounds to dangerous levels, mixed incompatible molecules, and ignored crucial stabilizing agents. Her signature scent, the one Terrence planned to feature prominently at the exhibition, contained exactly the combinations Master Hanako had warned against. In a controlled environment like our lab, the problems weren't obvious. But under exhibition conditions, warm rooms, hundreds of people, changing humidity, these imbalances could trigger reactions ranging from headaches to acute anxiety. I sat back, stunned by the potential disaster looming. Buyers, critics, and industry leaders would all be exposed to these unstable compounds. The reputation Ingrid had built over decades could be destroyed in an evening. I had three options: tell Terrence, who wouldn't listen, quit in protest, which wouldn't help anyone, or find another way. The next morning, Phoebe summoned me to her new office, my intended office. "Terrence says you should assist me," she said without looking up from her phone. "I need you to prepare sample vials of my signature scent for the exhibition preview." "Of course," I replied. "May I review your final formulation first? Sometimes certain compounds require special handling for events." She shrugged and pushed a notebook toward me. "Whatever. Just make sure it smells exactly like my prototype. Terrence says this scent will define the company's future." On that point, at least, we agreed. Over the next 3 weeks, I became Phoebe's shadow. I offered suggestions that she mostly ignored. I pointed out potential issues that she dismissed. I recommended standard testing that she called paranoid. But I also gained her trust by praising her creativity and supporting her in front of Terrence. Gradually, she began allowing me more involvement in the final preparations, particularly for her signature scent, which she'd named Dominance. An appropriate name, though not in the way she intended. 2 days before the exhibition, disaster struck. During a final formulation session, Phoebe accidentally knocked over a bottle of essential compound, losing half our prepared stock of her signature scent. "What am I going to do?" She panicked, looking at the spreading liquid on the floor. "The exhibition is in 2 days. We need at least 50 sample vials." "I can help," I offered calmly. "I've memorized your formulation. If you handle the other preparations, I can recreate this batch overnight." Relief washed over her face. "You'd do that? Even after?" "We're on the same team," I assured her. "The company's success is what matters." She left me alone in the lab with full access to all ingredients and her complete trust. That night, I worked methodically, carefully adjusting the formulation of Dominance. I didn't sabotage it, not exactly. I simply restored balance to certain molecules while subtly modifying others. The changes would be undetectable in the lab environment but would reveal themselves under specific conditions. Conditions exactly like those at a crowded exhibition hall. As dawn broke, I sealed the last sample vial and prepared detailed notes on proper handling of the fragrance. Phoebe would never read them, but they would provide important documentation later. When she arrived that morning, I presented her with the completed work. "You're a lifesaver," she exclaimed, examining a vial. "It smells perfect. Just doing my job," I replied. "Remember, fragrance is all about balance," she laughed. "You and your balance. This is going to blow everyone away." Again, we agreed, though for entirely different reasons. The day of the International Fragrance Exhibition arrived. The grand hall was transformed into a sensory wonderland, with booths from every major fragrance house worldwide. Alchemy's display was prominently positioned near the entrance. Terrence had paid extra for the prime location. Our booth featured elegant glass displays of 5 fragrances, with Dominance positioned center stage. The marketing materials praised it as a revolutionary approach to modern fragrance and the future of alchemy essentials. Terrence arrived in an expensive suit, Phoebe beside him in a designer dress. They both ignored me as I quietly arranged the sample vials and prepared the diffusers. "The buyers from Nordica Luxury Group are coming at 7, Terrence instructed Phoebe. "Their order alone could double our annual revenue. Make sure they get the full experience of your creation." As industry elites began filling the hall, the temperature rose steadily. Humidity increased with each additional body. Exactly the conditions needed for what was about to happen. Phoebe began enthusiastically spraying her signature scent for anyone who approached our booth. For the first hour, everything seemed fine. The scent was pleasant enough in small doses and initial exposure. But as the molecules dispersed throughout the warm, humid environment, they began to transform. just as Master Hanako had taught me they would. The first sign that something was wrong came from a renowned critic who had been hovering near our booth for several minutes. She wrinkled her nose and stepped back, consulting her notes with a confused expression. "Is there something else being diffused nearby?" she asked, looking around. "I'm getting an unusual undertone." Phoebe laughed nervously. "That's just the complexity of my creation. Many layers reveal themselves over time." The critic nodded uncertainly and moved to a neighboring booth. Within 30 minutes, a pattern emerged. People would approach our display with interest, spend a few moments sampling the fragrances, then inexplicably drift away with vague excuses. Some rubbed their temples, others loosened their collars. A respected buyer from Paris circled back after leaving our area. "There's something distinctive about this scent," she said, struggling to find the right words. "It reminds me of something, but I can't place it." What she couldn't articulate was that the scent was triggering a subtle neurological response, a barely perceptible feeling of unease. Not enough to recognize consciously, but sufficient to make people instinctively want to distance themselves. Phoebe, growing increasingly desperate as potential buyers kept drifting away, began spraying more of her signature scent into the air. This only intensified the effect. "I don't understand," she whispered to Terrence. "Everyone loved it in the office tests." Terrence's confident smile had faltered. The Nordica representatives were due in 20 minutes, and our booth was noticeably less crowded than our competitors. "Use the diffusers," he commanded. "Maybe people just need more exposure." I watched silently as Phoebe activated the electronic diffusers, releasing a steady stream of dominance into our area. The molecular concentration in the air increased, pushing the effect from subtle unease to something more pronounced. A jewelry designer from the adjacent booth approached Terrence. "I don't mean to intrude, but is there something wrong with your fragrance? My clients are asking if there's a problem with the ventilation in this section." Terrence glared at her. "Absolutely not. This is a revolutionary scent created by our head perfumer." "Well, it's making people uncomfortable," she persisted. "Several have mentioned feeling anxious or getting headaches." As if to confirm her point, a journalist nearby suddenly pressed his hand to his forehead and quickly walked toward the exit. Panic flashed across Terrence's face. He turned to Phoebe. "What's happening?" "I don't know," she hissed. "It smelled perfect in the lab." The exhibition director was now approaching our booth, accompanied by two concerned-looking staff members. In the background, I noticed several attendees pointing in our direction while speaking to security personnel. "Mr. Harrison," the director addressed Terrence formally, "we've received multiple complaints about irritation coming from your display area. If there's a problem with your samples—" "There is no problem," Terrence insisted, his voice rising. "This is sabotage from our competitors." The director looked skeptical. "Nevertheless, if the complaints continue, we'll need to shut down your booth for safety reasons." As he walked away, Terrence rounded on his staff. "Find out what's happening. Now." Dmitri cautiously approached with a testing strip. "The molecular structure seems to be changing in this environment. The base notes are intensifying inappropriately." "That's impossible," Phoebe snapped. "I followed all the standard protocols." This was my moment. I stepped forward. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, I took the testing strip from Dmitri and examined it carefully. "The heat and humidity are destabilizing certain molecules in the formulation. This combination," I pointed to a specific compound in Phoebe's notes, "becomes volatile under these conditions." "How would you know that?" Phoebe demanded. "It's one of the primary principles taught in Tokyo," I replied calmly. Master Yamamoto emphasized that certain molecular combinations must be balanced with stabilizing agents, especially for public exhibitions where environmental factors can't be controlled. The color drained from Phoebe's face as understanding dawned. She hadn't just created a bad fragrance, she had created an actively problematic one, and now hundreds of industry professionals were experiencing the results. Terrence looked between us, desperation evident in his eyes. The Nordica representatives had just entered the hall. "Can you fix it?" he asked me, his earlier smugness entirely gone. I hesitated, allowing the moment to stretch. "Possibly. I would need to introduce a counteracting agent to neutralize the problematic compounds." "Do it," he ordered. Whatever you need. I'll need access to the reserve ingredients in our supply case, I said. An authorization from the exhibition director to diffuse a neutralizing agent throughout this section. Terrence immediately pulled out his phone to call the director while Phoebe watched helplessly, her career crumbling before her eyes. I retrieved my personal case from beneath our display table, a special kit I had prepared specifically for this scenario. Inside were several vials of precisely formulated scents, each labeled with Japanese characters. The exhibition director arrived quickly, alarmed by the growing situation. "What exactly is happening here?" he demanded. I explained in technical terms how certain molecular combinations could become unstable under specific environmental conditions. I described the subtle neurological effects such compounds could trigger and emphasized that while uncomfortable, they weren't dangerous. "I've prepared a neutralizing agent," I concluded, holding up a crystal vial containing an amber liquid. "It will stabilize the existing compounds and eliminate the negative effects." The director, a former chemist himself, nodded in understanding. "How quickly will it work?" "Almost immediately," I assured him. "The molecules are designed to bind with and transform the problematic compounds." With his authorization, I uncapped the vial and carefully added its contents to the exhibition hall's central diffusion system. Within minutes, the subtle atmosphere of anxiety began to dissipate. People who had been avoiding our section gradually returned, their expressions relaxing. What they were experiencing now was the true art I had learned in Tokyo, a perfectly balanced composition that created a sense of mental clarity and emotional calm. Not overpowering, not manipulative, but gently supportive of the natural human state. The Nordica representatives, who had been waiting cautiously at the periphery, finally approached our booth. "What exactly happened here?" their lead buyer asked Terrence. Before he could fabricate an explanation, I stepped forward. "A valuable lesson in the importance of proper training and respect for ancient techniques. The original formulation was unbalanced, but now you're experiencing what our founder always envisioned: fragrances that enhance rather than overwhelm." I explained the principles behind what they were now experiencing, how certain molecules could support cognitive clarity and emotional balance when properly formulated. "This is remarkable," the buyer said, closing her eyes to better experience the scent. "It's subtle, yet effective. I feel more focused, more present." "That's exactly the intention," I replied. "Our founder believed fragrance should be a supportive presence, not an aggressive one." For the next hour, I became the de facto representative of alchemy essentials. Critics, buyers, and even competitors gathered to hear about the techniques I had learned in Tokyo. I shared just enough to fascinate without revealing the carefully guarded secrets of Master Hanako's teaching. Terrence stood to the side, watching as industry leaders who had previously ignored him now engaged enthusiastically with me. Phoebe had disappeared entirely, too humiliated to face the crowd. The Nordica representatives, impressed by both the recovered situation and my knowledge, requested a private meeting for the following morning. "We're interested in an exclusive arrangement," their lead buyer whispered to me. "Not with just anyone at Alchemy, but specifically with you." As the exhibition drew to a close, the director approached with several board members from the International Fragrance Association. "That was quite a demonstration," he said. "Intentional or not, you've given us all a powerful lesson in respect for fragrance chemistry." "Some lessons need to be experienced to be truly understood," I replied. After the attendees had departed, I found Terrence sitting alone in our disheveled booth, tie loosened and expression grim. "The board chairman called," he said without looking up. "There's an emergency meeting tomorrow morning." "I assumed there would be," I replied, packing my materials. "You knew this would happen," he said. "It wasn't a question. I knew an unbalanced formulation would become problematic under exhibition conditions. Yes, any properly trained perfumer would have known that. You could have prevented it. You could have corrected Phoebe's work beforehand." I paused, meeting his gaze directly. "The way you prevented a qualified professional from receiving the position she earned? The way you corrected your mistake of appointing an unqualified family member to a critical role?" He had no response. "See you at the board meeting," I said, walking away. That night, I received 3 calls. one from Master Hanako checking on the demonstration, one from Ingrid who had heard about the exhibition from her industry contacts, and one from the board chairman requesting all my documentation on the Harmony project. I slept peacefully for the first time since returning from Tokyo. The board meeting began at 8 the following morning. I arrived early with a comprehensive presentation, my training certificates from Tokyo, detailed notes on the Harmony project spanning 7 years, correspondence with Ingrid confirming her intentions for my role upon return, and complete documentation of the molecular issues with Phoebe's formulations. Terrence arrived minutes before the meeting began, Phoebe notably absent, the boardroom filled with senior executives and major shareholders, many of whom I'd never met. The chairman called the meeting to order with a grave expression. Yesterday's incident at the International Fragrance Exhibition has created significant concern, he began. Our company was publicly embarrassed, and preliminary reports suggest negligence in our quality control processes. Terrence immediately launched into a defense, blaming unusual environmental conditions and suggesting that competitors might have interfered with our display. The chairman let him finish, then turned to me. Ms. Chandler, would you please explain exactly what happened yesterday from a technical perspective? For the next 30 minutes, I walked the board through the science of molecular stability in fragrance compounds. I explained how certain combinations required specific balancing agents, particularly in uncontrolled environments. I detailed the neurological pathways through which fragrances influenced perception and behavior. I never directly accused Phoebe or Terrence of incompetence. I didn't need to. The technical evidence spoke for itself. When I finished, the chairman nodded thoughtfully. And the recovery? The neutralizing agent you used was quite effective, according to multiple reports. That was an application of the techniques I studied in Tokyo, I explained. Master Hanako's teachings emphasize harmony and balance, principles our founder also valued deeply. The chairman turned to Terrence. Did you review Ms. Chandler's training reports from Tokyo before making staffing decisions? Terrence shifted uncomfortably. Those reports weren't relevant to operational needs. The company required immediate leadership in the perfumer position. Interesting, the chairman replied, because we have here a letter from Ingrid Northwood, dated before her retirement, explicitly stating that the Tokyo training was the final preparation for Ms. Chandler to assume the head perfumer role upon her return. He held up a document I had never seen. Furthermore, we have confirmation that Nordica Luxury Group has offered an exclusive contract with Alchemy Essentials, contingent specifically on Ms. Chandler leading the fragrance development team. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The board has reached a decision, the chairman continued. Effective immediately, Veda Chandler will assume the position of head perfumer and creative director for Alchemy Essentials, with full authority over all fragrance development. He turned to Terrence. Mr. Harrison will transition to regional sales director, focusing on our existing product lines in secondary markets. Terrence's face flushed dark red. This is outrageous. One incident doesn't. This isn't about one incident, the chairman interrupted. This is about respecting the vision of our founder and recognizing exceptional talent. The board vote was unanimous. He stood, effectively ending the discussion. Ms. Chandler, please prepare a complete recovery plan by the end of the week. The rest of you, thank you for your time. As the board members filed out, many stopped to congratulate me. Terrence remained seated, staring at the table as his career imploded around him. When we were alone, he finally looked up. You planned this from the beginning. You let Phoebe fail spectacularly to prove a point. No, I corrected him. I simply allowed natural consequences to unfold. Phoebe was never qualified for the position, something you knew but ignored. I didn't sabotage her work. I just didn't prevent the inevitable failure her inexperience would cause. I gathered my materials. The difference between us, Terrence, is that I understand the power of balance in molecules, in business relationships, in justice. He glared at me. So this was your revenge? Humiliating me and ruining my niece's career? I smiled slightly. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. There's an important distinction. As I walked toward the door, I paused. Oh, and Terrence? Master Hanako taught me that the true measure of power isn't in what you take, but in what you create. I've just created a future for alchemy that honors its past while embracing innovation. What have you created lately, besides nepotism? I didn't wait for his response. There was too much work to do. A revolutionary fragrance line to develop, ancient techniques to honor, and a legacy to build. 3 months later, our Harmony collection debuted to international acclaim. The carefully balanced formulations created subtle but profound experiences for wearers: clarity, confidence, tranquility. Industry publications praised the revolutionary approach that transforms fragrance from accessory to essential companion. Terrence eventually left for a position at a budget cosmetics brand. Phoebe, humbled by the experience, enrolled in a proper perfumery school in Grasse, where she would spend years learning the foundations she had arrogantly dismissed. And me? I received a handwritten note from Master Hanako that simply read, "Balance achieved." The most satisfying revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction. Not in taking something away, but in creating something better. Not in burning bridges, but in building new paths that lead exactly where you were always meant to go. If you enjoyed this story of justice finally being served, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tales of persistence and triumph. Have you ever had to watch someone unqualified take a position you deserved? Share your experience in the comments. I find that sometimes the sweetest victory comes from simply being patient, while incompetence reveals itself naturally. Your support means everything to storytellers like me.